Here we are. We are
Hi
live.
guys.
Hi, everyone. We are here with
Hello.
Dan from Monument.
Hey
Uh,
boys.
how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm surprisingly good, seeing that it's 2020. I'm good. How are you? Hang on, I've been waiting to do this for like half an hour on the stream because wait for it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so
Wow.
disappointing. It was so disappointing.
That's a big start.
It's all about the noise. We are audiophiles after all, you know.
We should
How are
sample
you
it.
guys? Tell me how is life? You guys okay?
Yeah, man. We are okay. We're okay.
Yes,
Good, man.
everything
Good.
is good now.
Good.
The start of this year was, since we are the half of the year. It was
Yeah.
a pretty
Crazy,
bad
huh?
start, as you know.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We will have also some crazy dates this year, so we'll
Yeah.
see. But it started very badly, or in a weird way, because there are some bad stuff that happened, but that stuff didn't lead necessarily only to bad things, I think.
No, this is it. You can't only look at the darkness in these situations. You got to find good
side.
things and keep motivated and all these kind of things, right? In these situations, I mean, what else can you do, right? I mean, yes, we can sit here and paint the devil on the wall, as they say in Germany, but we like to stay productive, right? Have you guys been writing music in lockdown and stuff, or what's happening on that front?
Absolutely not, because we just released an album. And
You did, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes,
100.
actually, we released it during the lockdown. So yeah, we never played it live. We had some concerts, but we had to postpone them. So
are you happy that you released despite of lockdown, or do you wish you had put it back a year? How has it been? I mean, I'm sure digital is the same as always, right?
Actually, I think that digital is doing better. I don't know why, but we decided to release it anyway, and we are happy with our choice, because we wanted to give people something to listen to during these times. We could have postponed it, like a lot of other bands did, but we decided to go for it anyway. It was already scheduled, but we decided to not postpone it for this reason.
Good for you, man. Good for you. That makes me happy. I'm glad we keep it going,
Yes.
Fantastic.
We don't stop, but we didn't add the opportunity to write new music because, well, for me, for example, when I write music, I base everything in my everyday experience, everyday life.
Yeah.
And well, I was just at home in lockdown, or going to the studio working for someone else, and didn't have time to live my life.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. You don't want to start repeating yourself, and you don't want to. You've just had an album out. Like, you need a bit of a sort of a creative break, otherwise you kind of burn out, don't you, with these kind of things? You can't just keep going, bam, bam, bam. I know it's a speedy world now, and everybody's trying to release albums like every fucking year, but I'm hoping because of lockdown that people are actually, like, they have time to sit down and write properly now, and that we'll get some good albums after this,
Yeah. I hope so. Also, the listening side of it, because well, now everything is about singles and playlists and all that stuff, but I grew up listening to albums. I know songs that I like, which I don't even know the title. I know where they are in the album. I always say, oh yes, track number 3, but I don't know the title because I listened to the whole album.
Yeah. Track 1 on side B is always a good one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, for me,
but I know what you mean. It's I miss the art of the album. Don't get me wrong. I love albums that are like 12 songs that are just killer singles. But I love albums as well that are like, that have variety. So this art has kind of been lost a little bit, hasn't it? Where like, you know, Black Sabbath or whatever would just put whatever the fuck they could think of at the time on this album, and then you would have all these like random like classical tunes and kind of, you know, like Planet Caravan, what the fuck is that? And it's like, it's not, you know, if it came out as a Black Sabbath single, it would never work. But because it was the album was the format, you could get away with these kind of things. And nowadays it's all, like you say, it's all single, 4 or 5 singles every album. So you get very many pop songs on an album these days, right? This is it.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I have to say that this situation gives me the opportunity to have more time and have the time to sit down and put a backing track and play the guitar on it, because normally I have to
which you probably didn't do for a long time, right? I'm the same. It's nice to have this opportunity, man. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah. It was a great opportunity to come back to the early time when I had more time to do that. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed this kind of.
I'm happy for you. I'm glad you still enjoy it. This is it. For so many people, it becomes work, and they don't, you know, and it's like, oh, practice. I have to practice again. You know? But if you find joy in these little things, I'm the same. I'm like, I love just like whacking on a backing track or just a song, you know, just anything, and just playing over it these days, you know, not taking it so seriously all the time, you know. Yeah.
It's good to have fun while playing.
Good.
So
exactly. Otherwise, what's the point?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yes.
So I think we can start with the interview.
Let's go.
Absolutely. Shoot.
I start with a standard question.
Sure.
So when did you start playing the guitar, and why?
And why? This is always good.
Why?
Chicks, man. Chicks. No, I started. I must have been 13. I think 13. I started dabbling. So quite late, I suppose, compared to other people. You know, I wasn't one of these kids that played piano at 5 or whatever. You know, I kind of. My dad had an acoustic guitar, and he wouldn't play often, but he would play like on Christmas and whatever. So when I started being interested in music and started being interested in rock and stuff, it was one of those things where I would play his acoustic guitar for like a year when I was 13 until I had enough money saved up. I think it was like 350 euros or something, and I bought one of those starter packs, you know, with the electric guitar and the little amp and the lead and the headphones, and two picks and a tuner. No, it was Yamaha did them at the time. It was like a Yamaha RG something
RG
821 or something. Okay. I sold it to a student afterwards, and I kind of regretted, because I had done some amazing like paintings on it, and anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, no, I mean, I started. I just remember I wanted to do something with music, and I didn't really know what. So I was like, and I think it was honestly kind of fate or luck or whatever you want to call it, because I remember looking at different things. Drums were too big and too expensive. I was thinking about saxophone at the time, because I thought saxophone is a cool thing, you know. And I was there was this shop in like 15 minutes from my house, you know. There's a small town, and that was there was a shop that was also a music school. So they had a guitar shop, and so what we did is I booked my first lesson, and I didn't have a guitar, so I showed up 15 minutes early to buy a guitar and then have my first lesson. And I didn't know what the difference was between a guitar and a bass, you know. So he points at one wall with bass guitars. He says, "Do you want this or do you want that?" And I'm like, that, you know. And I just so it could have been very different, you know. I could have pointed at the other wall, and I would now be one of those annoying bass players who plays too many notes, you know.
That would not be a problem. As you know, bass players cannot hurt.
I know. No, I mean, for me, it was just as soon as kind of rock and roll and heavy metal came into my life, I was like, this is what I want to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, I dabbled with, you know, these days, as many guitar players do, I play a bit of bass, and I do a lot of the computer stuff, and I do some singing, but it's always been the guitar, man. I mean, I suppose for me, that the first time I was like, this is the shit, this is what I want to do, was when I got Killers Second Iron Maiden album, and
Okay.
there's like an instrumental called Ides of March at the beginning, and the solo was just the best thing I had ever heard. I was like, okay, this I want to do, you know. So yeah, I was 13, 14 years old. There you go.
And then you studied with a teacher, or?
Yeah, I did from quite early on. I kind of had group lessons in the beginning, and then quite quickly, you know, with two other boys, I think, and they were older than me, but they didn't progress as fast as me. So quite quickly it became clear that I should probably go on my own. And then I had lessons with this guy, and I see him now actually, because, you know, I mentioned to you earlier before we started the interview that I moved back where I grew up, and so we're good friends now, actually. You know, he's close to retiring age and stuff, but he was a really big inspiration in the beginning, because he was, you know, one of these people who always smiles on stage as well, and he always had fun playing and these kind of things. But in a way, you know, he taught me classical guitar. He was really into what was called jazz rock at the time. I suppose it's called fusion now or whatever. Okay. So we were playing, you know, I was playing Santana, I was playing Al Di Meola, I was playing all these different things that didn't necessarily have anything to do with rock and metal, what I wanted to do, but it was kind of a good thing, because it meant I always, you know, I was always doing double homework. You know, I was kind of, after the lesson, I would come home and I would practice every day, and I would make sure I got the stuff I had to do for the guitar lesson. I would get that done early, so that I could go and do fun stuff like play Paul Gilbert songs or play Metallica or whatever, you know. Yeah. So I was always like, made sure I was prepared for my lesson so that I could go and do the fun stuff. Not that the lesson wasn't fun, but I feel like I kind of had both. It was more like I taught myself all the metal stuff. You know, back then it was like early days of Internet Tab. So there was very little Internet Tab, but most of it was like, you know, buying the book at the music store or whatever, or like getting DVDs, you know, and things like this. But yeah, learning other styles in my lessons. So I was always quite versatile because of this, I think, you know.
So you were a good student, not a lazy one.
I was, yeah, no, I was not rebellious, telling my guitar teacher to fuck off. I was happy to be there, you know. It was this thing. No, I mean, I was in music, I was a good student. Yes, there was other things. I mean, in school, especially by the end, when I decided I was going to go and do the music thing, and, you know, anyway, tales from the past. You know?
That's classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talking about your music growth, which are the albums and the bands that have influenced you the most?
Good question.
Thank you. It was written.
It wasn't off the top of your head.
Yeah.
It's weird, you know. I don't know how it is for you guys. I don't know how close we are age-wise. I feel like for my generation, I got into, like, my parents weren't into rock or metal or anything like that. It wasn't like I got it from home. Like they had, you know, maybe Elvis I listened to because of my parents or something like that when I was younger. But generally speaking, I got into it because when I was like 11, 12 or whatever, hip hop was like the thing, rap was really in. And through rap, I got into nu metal bands. You know, kids in school would be into rap, and then I would get into like Limp Bizkit, and from there I would get into Korn, and from there I would get into, you know, Mudvayne or whatever. And then later on, kind of when I started playing 13, 14, I started discovering older bands, you know. I remember it was like one of my birthdays, and my mother's like, you know, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, oh, I'm into rock now. Can you get me some rock? You know, whatever. And she buys me this like sampler with like all these old fucking bands on it, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know. and then I start listening to it, and it's like T-Rex, Deep Purple, Nazareth, Motorhead, and I'm like, this is fucking amazing. So then I start diving into all this stuff, and I get into Maiden, and I start getting into Judas Priest and Metallica and all that kind of stuff, you know, the classic stuff. And because I grew up in Germany, it was, you know, Scorpions and Gravedigger and Rage and these kind of power metal kind of bands. Yeah. So that was a big thing for me growing up, was power metal. Like Stratovarius Fourth Dimension maybe was an early album that I was into, you know, Rhapsody, you know. but yeah, a bit later, then it was the heavier stuff. I started getting into melodic death metal and you know, Arch Enemy and Nevermore and Testament and, you know, Trivium, when Trivium were good, when Trivium started out, you know what I mean, when they were doing their own thing rather than this Century Media thing that happens to everybody, where then they do pop metal, you know. But you know what I mean. The last album is good, actually. I shouldn't say that. I'm not here, you know, I don't want to diss what they do, but I enjoy the early albums that they did with Sneap and so on, you know. But yeah, that was always it for me. I always enjoyed like heavy music, but I was always into singers like David Coverdale and Dio and Jeff Tate and Dickinson and people like this, you know. So yeah, there was always more space, I thought, for combinations, you know. But this is it. So if you're asking about albums, man, I would say I think since my youth, a lot of the stuff that I listen to has changed, but the top three have always kind of stayed the same. So one is Godless Endeavor by Nevermore. Came out at the right time, like 2005. I was that age. I was 14, 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
Doomsday Machine, Arch Enemy, was a big one at the time, similar sort of time. And Brave New World, Maiden's Brave New World was a big one. Again, like, older people would probably disagree and be like, oh no, it's a terrible album, listen to Number of the Beast or whatever, you know. But I listened to all of it. But for me, it was like, that was the time I got into them. That was what was out at the time. And it just, at that time, I was so moved by it and so molded by it. And like, honestly, these three albums, still to this day, I can listen front to back without getting bored. That isn't true for any other album that I own, that I have found in my life, you know. So
I totally agree with you, man. Because the two albums that I loved from Maiden are Killers and Brave New World. So
it's funny, isn't it? Funny.
Yeah.
And honestly, the first time I heard Maiden, I didn't like it. I was like, because I was used to Korn and Motorhead and bands like this, I was like, why is he singing? Yes. Why is he singing like a girl? What is this? So I put it back on the shelf. You know, back in the days when you would go to the CD store and listen to stuff, I was like, what the, you know. But then you know how it goes. Someone gets you something and you like listen to it properly, and you're like, oh, okay.
Have you ever seen them
interrupted
live?
You. Have I seen them live?
Yep.
Maiden.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, I reckon the first time, I remember the first time they were like, I was aware of them and they came here. I was too young to go, and I was so gutted because I saw like the whole train station full of people in the coats and like going on the train to this other city to watch them. No, I saw them. I think I saw them at Wacken something like 2010, 11, 12, something like that.
Oh, so not many.
But then in the last, I mean, with Monument we were very lucky, you know. So we opened the stage for them at a festival called Rockwave in Greece.
Wow.
And I obviously watched the show afterwards, and we opened, not the same stage, but we opened a different stage at Rockavaria. Sorry, I had to, you know, dig in my brain for a while. In the same year, 2018, so, which was in Munich on the Königsplatz, you know, on the big square in the center. So I saw them twice in 2018, and I was blown away by just how, you know, the energy these boys still have, you know, and that they still just perform peak kind of stuff, you know. Very fun show. It never gets old for me. You know?
Did you meet them or?
No, I can't say that I have. I mean, Bruce lives in West London, or at least he used to. So I used to, like, you know, see him once in a while at the coffee shop or something when I was still living in London. Yeah, and I think Steve I saw once or twice backstage or whatever. But you know, these people, they're, you know, they're always surrounded by security and all this kind of stuff. You don't go up and you say, Steve, can I have a picture? It's not something you do, you know. This is what people always ask, you know, did you party with Maiden? Like, no, fucking hell no. This is not what happens, you know. But, you know, but honestly, you know, it's like we got to know their crew, and they're all lovely, you know. They have this big operation, but you know, Maiden show up, you know, in a limousine 10 minutes before they go on stage. And when they get off, they get back in the limousine, and that's it. They go back to the hotel. There is not much, because they know how it is. They would just be besieged the whole time, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, I'm sure they're very lovely people. This is it.
I remember two things about Iron Maiden. The first time I listened to it, this man gave me Rock in Rio CDs, and I was amazed by that.
Yeah.
And then the first time and the only time I saw them live, it was at Heineken Jamming Festival in Italy
in 2003.
2003.
Cool,
We
man.
were together.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool,
it was
cool.
quite an adventure because we. Do you remember, Fazio?
Of course, how could I forget?
How could you forget? Go on, tell me.
We had a hole in our tires in the car.
Actually, we were driving. We were like 18 years old, so we were very young. It was one of the first times we went to a concert by our own. We were with one of our friends' car, and it was a very old Audi. I suppose it was an Audi 80, so it is very old. And in the highway, the tire just blew off. And we didn't lose the control of the car, so it was quite an experience because we had to drive with the replacement tire, for like 130 kilometers before finding any service.
You're not meant to go more than 50 kilometers an hour or whatever, right?
No, it was not the smaller one. It was just a proper tire, but it was not inflated. Good. So we had to go slow to find a service station with the air and just inflate it all. So it was quite an experience. We went there the day before the concert. It was a big festival. There were also Lacuna Coil, if I don't mind. Also
Cradle of Filth,
and the day before there was Bon Jovi, I think. Yes. Well, we went there. We slept into the car, and then the day after, we wanted to be in front of the stage, in front row, something like that. We stayed under the sun in Italy in July or June. I don't remember. From 7:30 in the morning to 10 in the evening, and we were a little bit burnt. Just a lot burnt. I still have the pictures. It was completely red.
At least it was only burnt, right? If it was me, I would like have heat stroke or something. I would be in an ambulance, with these kind of conditions.
There were people fainting. Actually, at some point, the staff started to just spray water.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
No, with hydrants. Yes.
None of this bottled bullshit. Amazing. Oh,
but it was good. It was good.
But it was worth it, right?
Yes.
Of course.
You have stories to tell,
And a couple of days after, we had to do the high school exam, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we were red and white,
Yeah. Still ringing in your ears, probably. Yeah.
It's quite a story,
Nice, very nice.
And that's where I learned that beer doesn't defend you from heat.
From the sun.
Yes. But who cares?
Ooh.
And man, speaking of influence, what about guitarists? Guitar players.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as we all do, I think I started with quite, musical guitar players, let's say, people that kind of wrote good songs, and I was into the songs. And the more I played, then you start getting into like the shred and, the more technical side of things. So obviously it's, the Maiden boys and the you know, the Young Brothers in AC/DC were like early influences. It was kind of simple but impressive at the time, you know. And, you know, I mean, I suppose even Kirk Hammett in the beginning, I was, you know, like, but for me, it was, I always, you know, I like people who can play technically, but I gravitate more towards people who have nice feel and have a bluesier touch, you know. So I've always liked people like, you know, Gary Moore and Michael Schenker and people of that sort of caliber, and then kind of, you know, younger guitarists that were influenced by that. So then, you know, you kind of, you know, I grew up with blues rock. So like Ritchie Blackmore was a big influence, for example. So from there you get the Malmsteens and the Paul Gilberts, and, you know, then you get, you know, what I would consider kind of the generation of guitarists that was current when I grew up, which is kind of people like Jeff Loomis, even Gus G, like, you know, early Firewinds was like, I remember like Allegiance, that album they did in the early 2000s was my jam for like years, you know. And yeah, don't know if I'm forgetting. I mean, the Ammett brothers, obviously, in Arch Enemy at the time, Chris Ammett and Mike, was always a lovely combination. One did the technical stuff, one played the wah-wah and the simpler stuff, you know. Yeah, these kind of guys, you know. I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head, but there's millions. You know how it is. There's so many that I enjoy, you know. Willie John Roth, you know, people like that, you know.
And what about
you mentioned Ritchie Blackmore, and you mentioned also the saxophone, and that reminded me that well, I was very much into Deep Purple when I was 16 or something like that, and I read a lot of things, also books, and I read this interview from Ritchie Blackmore that stated that his main goal when he was playing with Deep Purple was trying to do the same scales as the sax players did with the guitar. That was his main goal. Yeah, because he was convinced. He always thought that the best scales are the one made with saxophone.
That's an interesting one. I did not know this, and I have, you know, read and watched a lot of that stuff, you know. That's interesting, because for me, it's weird. I think the reason I gravitated towards saxophone at an early age as well is because it's such a vocal instrument, you know. It's one of these things where saxophone solos, you know, unless we're talking free jazz, are melodic things that you can sing if you want to, you know. And for me, I think that's a good guitar solo for me as well, is like I take, you know, a 4-note Neil Sean solo in a Journey song that you can sing along to over Rusty Cooley sweep picking for 3 minutes any day of the week, you know. I think it's impressive. Don't get me wrong, I think it's really impressive, but to me there comes a point where it has nothing to do with music anymore and it becomes athletics, you know. And I'm not interested. I'm not here to do athletics. I'm here to make music, you know.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, this is it, you know. For me, anyway.
Well, I'm a bass player, so I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Of course, there's you know, technique helps with everything, but technique is not everything. Technique is just a tool, you know, like a guitar is a tool to express something, you know.
Altogether agree.
I was paying attention. Yeah,
man, as a guitar player, I have to ask you this one. So if you have to do a G3, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, what guitar players could you choose? Will you choose?
Oh, this is an interesting one.
You cannot choose yourself.
You cannot choose myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, I would try and do something interesting with 3 people that are quite different in their style. I think I would choose someone like, let's go with Marty Friedman. And then we'll go with Philip Sayce. Do you know Philip Sayce? Philip Sayce is a Canadian blues guitar player who will blow you out of the water, man. He plays, you know, that Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan style on steroids, like I'm talking. And his tone is so good, and, you know, stuff like that. See, now I'm like, oh, who else do I put in? Like, there's this Norwegian girl called Tora who's amazing. But let's try and find someone. Because I've not actually put anybody like Shreddy. I suppose Marty is kind of a Shreddy player. Who else, man?
Yeah, but
that's so difficult. That's so difficult.
He has his own style. So
yeah, It's like, am I like, can I pick people from the past? You know, can I pick like Blackmore in like '73? You know, because I don't know if I would pick Blackmore now. You know, Doug Aldrich, maybe Doug Aldrich, something like that. You know,
Okay.
not Petrucci, not Malmsteen, not always the same ones. You know.
Okay.
But yeah, an interesting one. Who knows? Maybe one day we will organize something, huh? Mauro.
Cool. Yeah.
We'll make something happen. More like G10 or G12, like politics.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
It will be funnier than
Yeah,
politics.
exactly. Yeah. The 12 guitar players talking.
My favorite guitar player from all the G3s I have seen so far, which is 2, I think, is the one where there was Eric Johnson. And Eric Johnson was just amazing.
Yeah, man. He's amazing.
It's the best G3 I ever seen, that one.
I can't say that I have watched them all. It's weird. I kind of... I have a lot of students that are into all the shredders and the Andy Jameses and the this and the that, you know, Jason Richardson, whatever. But it's weird. I stopped following that race a long time ago. You know, I like making music, and so I don't listen to that much music anymore anyway, especially new music, I suppose. I try to stay current and find something to listen to, but mainly I try to find good songs, you know? and I don't, you know, every time, you know, people are asking me about my album, for example, or whatever, they always assume it's going to be some like instrumental, shreddy, whatever masterpiece, you know, and it's just not what I'm into anymore. I was when I was 18, you know, I was really into that stuff, but
teenager stuff.
At the same time, I have to say, because I've been stuck in the house during lockdown, I went through all my old DVDs, like my old music DVDs that I haven't watched in 10 years, 15 years. And I find things like, you know, 5 Years in a Lifetime, Dream Theater, or whatever, which I'm like, oh my God. And then I pop it in and I'm like, man, this is really good. You know? And then like, I find the love again for this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, this is actually really good. You know, this has aged well, you know? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Tangents.
Also maybe because it reminds you of how you felt watching them in the first place. Yeah. You know?
I mean, it's this kind of stuff that, and it's weird because I was surprised it had the same effect on me that it did on me when I was 15, which was I would switch off the DVD and go, I need to practice. You know, it would be an inspiration. It's an inspiration. It's not like you're sitting there like, man, I'll never be this good. You know, because we're all different, right? That's the point. Like you go, oh, I like this bit. I like this bit. You pick some things out, you know, and you work on them. So it's an inspiration. It's nice to have the time to kind of dive into these things again at the moment, you know?
Yeah, it is.
I agree. That's a good starting point for studying. For me, studying now is not about, you know, scales and all that stuff. Yeah, those are important, of course, to keep in shape. But I'm focusing on the tone and the way to play simple grooves in my case, because I'm a bass player, but simple parts, you know.
Yeah.
And
consistently time and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I find it extremely harder than playing like just scales or doing technical exercises. It's because it's difficult to know if you're doing it right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, I find it here so much as well. I mean, I suppose the biggest kind of eye-opener, the biggest lesson I had when I studied music in London was when one of my teachers went to us, why would you spend 80% of your time practicing soloing when on stage 80% of the time, at least 80% of the time, you're playing rhythm guitar? Like, do 50-50, you know, when you practice, you know, and see how much the work comes in, you know, because, and I noticed this here as well, like it's the difference between a mediocre band and a good band and a great band is not the notes they play. They all play the same notes. And it's not the speed they play at. They can all play fast. But it's that the chemistry between the musicians, the way they can push and pull time, the consistency, the accuracy, these kind of things, the confidence, you know, just to deliver something with confidence and balls, you know, you don't get that so often. And especially, you know, now being back in Germany, I noticed this, you know, people used to say, oh, Germans don't have time or whatever. It's not in their blood or whatever. And I used to be like, it's bullshit. It's, you know, but now I go and watch German bands play once in a while, and I'm like, it's, you know, not the big ones, obviously, they know what they're doing, but the smaller ones, I'm like, okay, yes, there's always one or two people that are like always ahead of the beat, and I mean, maybe other people can listen to it without cringing, but to me it's one of these things that then I focus on it, you know, and I can't switch it off, and I don't enjoy it, you know.
Yes, I mean, having control of that is like a big step for a band. I think that it's something that makes the difference in the audience when you're listening to someone and saying, oh, these guys are very good, but because they are very interlocked in time, you know, and they are doing everything in a way that works. It's a lot of times talking about small bands or emerging bands, as they call them. I find that everyone is just playing their part as they studied it at home. And
just in their own bubble, kind of, right? This is it.
I'm not listening to the band like a whole, but I'm listening to, I don't know, 5 musicians playing their single parts, and it's not music to me. I mean, it's an exercise, that as well.
This is it, you know. But I guess, you know, you guys in the band, because you guys have been together for a long time now as well, you must notice this progression as well with yourselves. And I notice it with you guys, where it's like, you know, from the early days, from when we used to tour together, like the concept hasn't changed, but you have, you know, you all play better, you play better together, you have better production, better sounds, your songwriting gets better because, you know, you've done it so often that you know what to focus on, and you know how to make things interesting and how to cut all the fat off and all these kind of things, right? So that's how you get, you know, that's how you grow as a band, as opposed to a guy who sits at home and practices guitar in his bedroom, you know, I think.
I agree.
Anyway,
I agree.
Tangent again.
That's the part of the chat.
Yes, I agree with this statement also.
I went back to pentatonic scales because they are unrated, in my opinion.
It's true. It's true. I did this for a long time. I was playing all this, you know, Phrygian dominant bullshit, whatever. And it's kind of, you start to rely on the fancy stuff, you know, and you kind of go, man, there's certain guitar players out there, certain, you know, back to Deep Purple or whatever, like some of these riffs, they're just pentatonics. And you're like, why can't I write something that simple? And it's like you say, when you practice as well, it's the simple stuff, getting the simple stuff right. You know, first of all, having the balls and the courage to actually do it and write something and play something that simple. And then playing it, you know, well enough to be impressive without all the flash, without all the crazy notes and the, you know, is a very different ball game, you know.
That's the key. That's the key.
Oh yes,
cool.
You can play like 200 notes per second and you will impress some people. But if you play, I don't know, like just a simple riff with a few notes, but you do it very well, that's very hard to impress people with simple stuff. And if you do that, that's it.
But that's the, you know, a lot of us, especially in heavy metal, forget that most of the people listening to the stuff are not musicians, right? So the stuff that touches people, you know, a million notes an hour doesn't touch people, you know. Gary Moore playing the same note for 30 seconds makes them all cry, you know. It's like, what's the deal, you know? So that's the kind of stuff you need to, I think the hardest thing for a musician is switch off the nerd brain, the kind of studied musician brain, and think about it like a listener who has no idea how it's all done. and see the whole picture and all of this stuff that you were talking about earlier, right? And make something that is, I mean, the challenge for us in heavy metal especially is to make something that works for both people, right? Something that works for your, you know, your mom who knows nothing about Phrygian, and for the musicians, you know, or people who are, you know, kids coming up playing, going, wow, this is amazing, I want to be able to do that, you know.
Air guitarists.
Yeah, exactly. Guitar Hero players.
Yeah. Hi, Matthias.
Hi, Matthias. Yeah, you know, that's the point that I always try to focus on when I teach. And I always said to my students, you can play two notes in many different ways. You can bend, you can slide, you can put a pause between the notes, and every time you change, you communicate a different kind of feeling, you know.
And the pause is so important. It's like black matter, man. All the you know, people forget that it's just as important as you know, as the other stuff. You know?
As a bass player, I'd say it's even more important that notes, you know, ghost notes, the rests, and all that stuff. It's what defines rhythm.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in metal, right? We're so used to just having wall of sound from front to back, and it's okay for a song. But yeah, if you want something to groove, if you want people to move to something, you know, and be touched by something, the breaks are very important. The dynamics are very important. Yeah. Cool.
So how do you usually come out with a riff or a guitar solo, and where do you take inspiration from?
Good question.
I know.
Let me think about riffs. I mean, every so often, of course, I'm sitting there and just messing around, and something will come out. Usually an idea for a melody or a riff or something like that. And I do what I suppose many people do, is I will make a quick sketch somewhere, either on my phone, or if I'm close to the laptop, I will just open a project and put it down quickly if I think it's good. And so I have piles and piles of this stuff. And not a lot of it gets finished. It's not like everything becomes a song. And then often I find myself in a position where I'm working on a certain type of album, you know, because I'm not one of these people who's just like in the one band for his entire life. So I know where, you know, where to go with it stylistically. And I go and I look through my old notes and I find things and I'm like, this could work, this could work, this could work. And usually it's a collaborative thing, right? So you work with it with a singer or another musician or whatever, and you start putting stuff together. So that's the riff side of things. Okay. Solos, I am a fan because, for example, now I'm in pre-production for an album, and I like doing solos in pre-production because you kind of, the spontaneous stuff just comes out. You know, I'm one of these people. Maybe if I was playing in Dream Theater or Rhapsody or one of these bands, I would be someone who sits there and composes every note, you know. But with a lot of the styles of music that I play, which are more classic and more, you know, more towards the feel side of things than the technical side of things, I like to do the spontaneous thing. And you know, I suppose I'm lucky in a way because I'm an engineer and I do a lot of recording and I have the skills to record myself. I can go through this process of being like, oh, I really like that. Oh, I'm going to put it here. Oh, I'm going to try this now. And then I kind of puzzle these things together. And then when it's time for recording, I've had time to actually study it and actually practice it and play it properly. And I like this kind of spontaneous thing because I'm one of these people who overthinks things very easily, and I make things too complicated when they don't need to be. So the way for me to get in my own way and not do that is to just be like, okay, let's get some ideas out. Let's do something quickly. And half the time, you know how it is. It's like the first thing you did was the best thing you did. The next 5 were kind of like, okay, you're trying too hard now. So, and it's one of these things that, like, I get that if you're a John Petrucci or whatever, and you go and you record something that's at the very peak of your ability, that every time you go through that process, you have to push yourself, you have to get better, because you have to be able to play it live, and you have to be able to play it live when the drummer is playing it 20% faster if you're not on click, you know, and all these kind of things. But for me, it's like I don't like that. I like, you know, play something that's at 80% of your capacity in the studio, so that you can actually play it properly live, and that you can play it with feeling, and that you can have fun doing it, and people can see that you have fun doing it. And, you know, this has always been kind of more my philosophy. I like effortless things. I don't like this thing where it sounds like you're, you know, not always anyway, you know. I like to be able to run around and have some fun on stage, you know. I don't like these bands that just stand there and they have such complicated things to do that they don't move, that they don't have fun on stage. They're concentrating, you know. Petrucci with his leg up, you know. It's not my thing, you know. I like, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, this is it, you know. The challenge for me is, you know how it is when you're working on an album and you have only a 3-month period of time or whatever. The challenge is not to repeat yourself, for me anyway, on the album too much, you know. I find myself now going through pre-production going, okay, I've played this lick in this song, and this song. That needs sorting out. I need to find something else to do, you know. Because you know how it is as a musician. You have all these different things, but whatever you've kind of been focusing on recently tends to come out. You can't help it, right? Which is also why if I'm like, okay, I have to write, I don't know, if I had to write a black metal album next week or whatever, I would go and listen to that style a lot. You know, people are like, oh, what new bands are you into? What do you listen to for fun at the moment? I'm like, okay, for fun, this and this. But a lot of the time I'm listening to stuff for inspiration or because I just have to get in that zone, either as a writer, as a guitar player, producer, whatever, to attune my ears and my brain to this style of music, you know. So a lot of the times it's that as well, and you kind of try to get the right influences on the go and stuff like that, you know. Anyway, big tangents again. Go on.
That's great, because I see myself a lot in what you are saying, actually.
Thank God.
It's
it made sense then. Okay.
Yes, it makes total sense.
Good.
Yeah, I never thought about it. It's never clear until you listen to someone else say it. But that's one of my problems when we write new music and all that stuff, that I have some influences that are going through my music and my composition at that time, and it comes up in almost every song. So it's hard to change what's inspiring you in that precise moment. But
this is it.
We usually take a lot of time to write new songs.
And this is what it takes, isn't it? Because that's the only way really to get around this problem, is to take time for things to ripen a bit, and you kind of go back to it and go, and you with fresh ears, and right, this is kind of how I feel about it anyway.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Time is needed for music.
Yeah, me too, Matthias. Me too.
We all, and the difference between the records.
What does it mean?
I don't think. I don't know.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, love the music. Hope concerts come soon. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Me too, man. Me too. I don't know. It's a weird place we're in right now, right? Because part of me is like, yeah, it'll come back, but then part of me is like, I don't know if it ever will, the way that it was, you know. I don't know if a Wacken or a Rock in Rio will ever be able to happen again in that sort of capacity, you know.
I think it will. I think it will, definitely. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but yeah, we'll get through this and we go back to normal. Because
I hope so. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I think I don't know. I'm not one of these, you know, I don't jump on conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, but we might be in an age now where we just get more and more of these things, you know. I think the pandemics are going to come quicker now, you know, but who knows? I might be wrong. So maybe we'll just wear the mask at the concert, and this is it. You know, only 3 beers. That's it. I don't know. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. I hope you are wrong, but I fear that you're right. So we'll see.
Me too.
We will see. We will see. Well, we'll find a way. Which
absolutely, as always,
we'll find a way. You know,
we are used to it.
I don't think streaming concerts from your living room is necessarily the way. You know, this was a quick fix, but to be honest, I'm waiting for. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but there must be a massive race going on right now with the streaming services. Who is going to be, as in, like, I'm talking like Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, whatever. Like, who will be the first person to do good quality live music streaming, concert streaming into people's homes in a monetized sort of way that isn't Facebook, you know? I really wonder, because honestly, I don't think, you know, I think people go, it's a novelty for people to go, oh, okay, I'm going to watch Aerosmith play in their bedroom. But it's not what they want. It's not the quality they want. They want arena DVD quality shows, right? But obviously, you know, without filling up an arena, you can't do that these days. So I don't know how people are going to do it, but people are going to find very creative and different ways to do it, I think. So I'm excited to see what the future brings, you know.
Here in Italy, they did something like that for the Workers' Day, you know, May the 1st. And because usually they have just this big concert in Rome with a lot of people. It's a free concert with very big artists. But this year, of course, we were in a lockdown, so they did like a live streaming on the national television in TV studios. And it was something, to be honest, extremely sad.
Yeah,
because there were no crowd, you know, no people, just 5 or 4 musicians and some technicians, and that was it. It was very, I don't know, I didn't have a good feeling about it.
And you just don't have the crowd interaction. I'm wondering how that's going to work in the future. You know, if you know, if Zoom have upped their capacity to like having 5,000 people on a call now, maybe in a few months it will be 10,000, 12,000, 20,000 people. So then if you're a band playing, you just play, you know, in front of a green screen or whatever, but you can have a massive screen and you can see all the all the punters. You can have interaction that way. I don't know. I'm just making shit up. You know what I mean? Like,
that could be interesting.
People will find a way.
Oh, yes, as always. So let's go on with our questions.
Yeah, sure.
Do you remember your first live performance, and what was your best live performance ever?
Do I remember my first live performance? I think my first live performance was in Canada when I did a semester of school in Canada. I must have been like 15, and school is very different in Canada. So music was fantastic in Canada because you would kind of do what we used to do in university afterwards. Then you would have Mondays would be like, and you would have the same 4 classes every day for a whole semester, you know. So I had music every day, which was amazing, you know. So Monday would be like a theory lesson, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you would get together as a band, as a group, and you would practice a song, any song. You would pick something, and on Friday you had to perform it, and you would get marked.
Great.
And at the end of the year, we played a bunch of these numbers in you know, in the aula or the gym or whatever you want to call it, in the big hall, you know. So it was funny because you get all these vastly different people with vastly different backgrounds, you know, doing stuff together. So you'd have these like this punk kid doing a punk number, and then on stage gets this violin player, and this, you know, the same punk kid is still up, but he grabs an acoustic guitar. Okay, now they're doing a Celtic number or whatever, you know. But I was lucky enough to be in a class with a bunch of, you know, a couple of metal nerds. So we would have done Maiden, Mother Russia, something off the Black Album. I can't remember which song. a Children of Bodom song, probably something off Follow the Reaper or something like that. Those 3 songs, maybe something along those lines, you know, because there was a girl who played keyboards, fantastic keyboard player. So we had to do something with keyboards in, and at the time Bodom was the thing, right? So we did some Bodom.
Wow, cool,
yeah.
man.
So that was probably my first performance. What was my best? I mean, what do you like? How do you? What are the criteria, right? I mean, the best feeling was opening the stage for Maiden at Rockwave. It was fucking 40 degrees and my pedals melted and everything, but that's not the point. It wasn't. I don't think like as a spectator, sorry.
Yeah.
Watching me play, that was my best performance, if you know what I mean. But just the feeling of being on that stage under all that stuff, and you know, it was a fantastic stage. It was, you know, the people. It was a Mediterranean crowd, of course, so the emotions were flying higher than they would over here, you know. So it was an intense experience, and it was. I will remember it all my life. You know, I cherish that very much. So I would say that one, 2018 Rockwave, for me. Yeah.
Great.
Very nice. It was great. Cool. You opened for Maiden with Monument, right?
Yeah.
About Monument, how did you join them?
I had just finished university, like 2011, and I didn't know what to do with my life. I was kind of, all my friends had moved back from home from London, and I was all of a sudden, there was only like 3 people I knew in London. So I got long story short, I got the opportunity to go to Greece and play in a hotel for 6 months. So I said, easy life, you know, let's go play acoustic guitar in this hotel, get my shit together. Let's see if I really miss being in bands and all this stuff. Turns out I do, you know. So I'm out there for like 3 weeks. And I used to know this kid called Daniele Panza, Italian.
Oh, we know him.
Yes. You know Daniele.
Yes.
He did like the first Monument EP at the time, and he was kind of talking to me at the time about it, and he was like, "Oh, I might get you in this project," but it turned out he was leaving, so they were looking for someone to replace me. So, and like I've been in Greece for like 3 weeks, and I get this call from Peter Ellis, the singer in Monument, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm looking for a guitar player for Monument, and Dan showed me this video you guys did together, and at that time we had just done like technical difficulties or something, like a Racer X number on YouTube, just having some fun, you know." And he's like, you know, I remember him going, "I really like your vibrato, man," and stuff like this, you know. And I'm like, "Man, I've just moved out here. I've signed a contract. I can't. I can't." And I thought that ship had sailed, but turns out 3 weeks before my stint was over, like, so 5 months later or whatever, the phone rings again. It's Peter Ellis again. He's like, "Hey, listen, man, we have this guy, and his name was David El Cid. He plays in a band called Neuron Spoiler. They're like a power metal band in London, you know. But at the time, he wasn't sure. You know, there was something going on with his visa or whatever. And he wasn't sure. It was like they had stuff coming up in Europe, but he wasn't sure that if he left the UK, he would be able to get back in. So they were like, "Can you fill in?" type of thing, you know. And I was like, funnily enough, I'm back in a couple of weeks. Let's meet up and chat about it, you know. And I don't know what, you know, personal things went on with David or whatever, but pretty quickly it was like, okay, you've got the job, you've got the gig, you know. It was interesting. I moved back to London, so that was kind of my, you know, one of the motivators for me to move back to London, because I was in Greece going, do I go back or do I go back to Germany? What do I do? You know, so that was definitely one of the big motivations for me to go back to London. And I remember coming back, and like 3 weeks later or something, we were in the studio. We were doing a Deep Purple cover because John Lord had died. So we did Black Knight for like a Metal Hammer compilation in the UK, and it went from there. You know, it was quite quick, and then the first album happened, and it was kind of off. It was intense, you know, and a lot of work, but it was great. It was amazing, you know. So yeah, that's how I joined Monument.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hi,
Princessa. Hi.
Hey.
It was the year after we toured together. Actually, it was right? We toured together. We did like 2 gigs in that tour. One
I'm
in
trying to
London.
think. Yeah, I think that was
One in
2011
London.
as well. Was it not?
No, it
Yeah.
was 2010, I think.
Was it 10? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We played a gig in London and the
Yeah.
other one in Bristol, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I remember the one in London. Yeah. Fiddlers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Early days, man. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was good. It was good times. I cherish those times, man.
Absolutely.
What are your memories and thoughts about those days?
Oh man, it's strange, isn't it? Because it feels a lifetime ago. It's very hard. I don't have like these vivid memories of a lot of things because there's always so much stuff happening, you know. But I just remember the feeling. I remember, you know, kind of being relatively fresh in London, and all of a sudden, you know, I went from, you know, being in a village in Germany playing 2-3 shows a year. All of a sudden, I'm playing 2-3 shows a week, you know, because I could in London. And, you know, Calatrillos was a whole another crazy ride back then. And I just remember the scene. I remember this kind of the London goth scene and just it being so, you know, experimental and inclusive, you know, and such a family vibe. And I just always felt very, very welcome, you know, in these people's company. And it was great fun, you know. This is all I can say. It was like, it was not about, you know, being, you know, some massive rock star or whatever. It was not about money. It was just about, you know, being present in the moment, being, you know, playing amazing, you know, music as good as you could, and watching other people, you know, play their amazing music. And it's weird. It's like, it's how I think people probably think back to the 60s or the 70s when, you know, everyone was smoking marijuana and having a good time. I don't know. Like, for me, it was not that I was, you know, but it was a very free spirited time, you know, and it was, there were, you know, no real grown-up problems persisted for me at that time. So I was very much kind of able to just focus on studying and focus on music, you know. So I remember having amazing times with you guys and a lot of other people in the early days, you know.
I remember that sense of, you know, in the scene at the time in London, it was more like a family. That was the feeling about the scene in London. Do you? I don't know, because I never went back to London after that experience.
Really? Huh? Yeah.
Do you for sure, you know, is it still like that, or it doesn't exist anymore, that thing?
It's a good question. I mean, it's weird. We weren't really a goth band the way you guys weren't really a goth band either. So I never understood why we got kind of pushed into that scene. I think it's just, you know, it's just one of these things, you know, people, and they get you on a bill, and then other people like you and they get you on a similar sort of bill. And I was never a goth that way. So I, you know, after I didn't play in Calatrillos anymore, I didn't frequent that scene so much anymore. And it's kind of, like so often, it's kind of an in crowd, you know. It becomes one of these things where it becomes quite cliquey, and I didn't enjoy it so much anymore later on, you know. I mean, the vibe in London changed anyway, or the UK, you know. You can guess. I mean, it's not been on the news recently because of Corona, but for the last 3 years, Brexit was the only thing on the news, you know, for us in the UK. I mean, so it's one of these things. The mood kind of, even though London is still hailed as, you know, the kind of the liberal place to be in the UK, and the place where everybody can feel at home no matter who they are and what they believe in, all this kind of stuff. The sense creeps in where you don't feel welcome anymore, you know. And which, you know, was probably subconsciously part of the reasons why I chose now as the right time to come back. I always knew I would come back eventually, you know. But yeah, it's hard to say, you know. I haven't been going to the same clubs and going to the same gigs. Although I must say, the last year I was in London, because I knew it was my last year in London, I went back to these places, and I would go to small gigs again and all these kind of things. And I enjoyed it very much because you know, I knew I wouldn't be here forever, and I wanted to experience that again. And it was nice, you know, it was nice being there and watching it, kind of a new generation of bands do their thing, and kind of, you know, I wasn't so much part of it. I was more of an observer, let's say, but it was still good fun, you know. It's a weird one, you know. It's quite, I suppose, there are so many musicians in London and so many venues that it's a very cutthroat kind of industry, you know. Like you don't get looked after very well as a band. You don't get paid very well as a band in London. As soon as you move outside, you do, because people cherish it, because it's not oversaturated all the time, gigs every day, you know. But London is that kind of place. So yes, you can find everything, but it's also very competitive, you know. Yeah.
Actually, we have been in London. I just forgot because I removed the memory in 2008. We were touring with Angra and Geoff Tate, and we had a gig at the Underworld in Camden.
Yeah.
But our tour bus broke down. We made it, but we didn't make it in time, so our concert was cancelled. So we went to London. We watched the show from the other guys, and then we came back.
Oh man, that's such a shame, dude.
That's a shame also because they called us while we were on the broken tour bus, and they told us there are a lot of people here in front of the venue for you, and they just announced that you will not play, and they just turned their back and went home. And I said, wow, that was very, very bad. A very bad feeling. I removed it.
I know these things happen, right? This is the thing. These things just happen. There's always something, man. There's always something. You cannot.
Yeah, go on, man.
No. You go on. You go on.
I remember about the first time we toured in England, and about the Fiddler's Green, about that night. And I remember I was shocked. I never saw so many crazy people in the same place.
Good.
It was very fun.
I think that the actual name of the venue was Fiddler's Elbow. Fiddler's Green.
Yeah,
Fiddler's Green is a song.
there is a place. There are so many, you know. But yeah.
Those crazy people, I think they were just drunk, not crazy.
You know? I mean, Fiddler's Elbow was a special kind of gig and a special kind of place as well, because it was the kind of place it wasn't just music. You would get like weird pantomime acts and people painting, and you know, it was kind of this hippie, free-spirited kind of way of doing goth culture, which was quite an interesting thing, I think. And obviously lots of different cultures, you know, because it's a very multicultural place, you know, kind of all coming together in the spirit of the darkness. So yeah, it was good fun, you know.
Gothic melting pot.
Very arty. Yeah, Gothic melting pot, exactly.
And I remember we all the Ravenscry guys, we all fell in love with Calatrava. I really loved your music, guys. It was very original, very.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think back fondly to this time also. It was a very freeing time for me. It's weird. Yeah, how do you put this? It was, we were so caught up in what we were doing. You weren't even, you know, worried about what other people were thinking. You weren't worried about, should I go this way genre-wise or this way genre-wise? We were just doing our thing. You know, it was one of these things. And it's a shame that went away, you know, because, you know, how these things go, lineups change and people change. And I really believe that, you know, that could have been something really cool, you know. That could have been a really cool band. And it was a really cool band. It was just, you know, people got stuck in a rut sometimes, you know, and didn't progress, and the music didn't progress, and it kind of died a bit of a death years later because of that, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yes. I think that Fede behind the scenes has a nerd guitar
Yes, you
question.
may.
Yeah.
Yes, you may. Who uses pedals, right?
I call them noise generator.
I'm gonna have to be so boring and say like a tube screamer, because you just cannot do anything without it. You know, it's like, and I'm not like one of these fancy pedal guys with solos and stuff. Anyway, like I haven't really played wah. Here we go. I haven't played wah in years, really. I'm like a phaser guy, and yes, I like my delay and all these kind of things. But you know how it is in mixing; you put that stuff in post anyway. So, for me, it's all just about a good tone, man. It's this kind of thing. Chorus, I like chorus on stuff. Clean guitar, a bit of chorus on solos. You know, yeah, that's my answer. Final answer. Do I win?
I don't know.
You don't know. We'll find out later when the polls close. Yeah.
Yes, we have to ask Fede. So yeah, we'll see.
Cool.
Moving back for a moment at the monument, what are your plans for monument in the future?
Aha!
Yeah.
Now we get to the interesting stuff. So Monument actually hasn't been active for about a year or so. You know how things go. People go through personal stuff, and in heavy metal, you know this as well as I do, that people don't make a lot of money. So some
really?
people, you know, priorities change, and a decision was made sort of at the beginning of 2019 that we would go on a break. I don't know how long the break is going to take. I don't know if it's ever going to come back. You know, there's always some personal stuff behind these sort of things as well, you know. But the break has been long enough for me to not wait for it anymore and not rely on it anymore, if that makes sense. So I'm doing other stuff now. If it ever comes up again, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would love to do another Monument album, tour, whatever, you know. I love that band. I love the people. I always enjoyed, you know, the music and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, it got to a point where kind of two people left the band. It was weird. 2018 was like our biggest year in terms of success, you know, playing all these big festivals, opening for Maiden, opening for Priest. We went on tour with Accept, you know, stuff like that. Wow. But then at the same time, at the end of that year, two people left the band, like kind of out of the blue. Like, okay, one of them we kind of saw coming, but the other one was just out of the blue. And it was this kind of thing where I still to this day, I don't get it. I didn't get why you would do 6-7 years of bullshit gigs and all the work and all the slog. And then as soon as success comes, you bail out. I didn't get that side of it. And I think as much as I didn't get it, I was willing to kind of move ahead, but there was other people in the band who were very hurt by this, I think, and kind of took a step back and said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know, you know, you put your heart and soul into these things, and it's not like these people, you know, who left betrayed us or whatever. They had other priorities, and that's fine. It's just that it's very hard to then find people that you're going to put your trust in again after you've built a brand like that, after you've, you know, done things like that. You know, we did pre-production for a whole nother album. Like album 4 is basically written. I did a mix of our whole set of From Bang Your Head, which was filmed that year. So we have a whole like DVD that hasn't been released and all this kind of stuff. But because things kind of fizzled out, you know how these things go. The label doesn't want to push stuff if nothing new is going to happen. So that didn't happen. And it was it got to the point where I got asked, do you want to do this without certain people? And and it was me and one other guy left, you know, and I was like, and it was, to begin with, it wasn't my band. I didn't start the band. I joined the band, as we have discussed earlier. So I was like, and, you know, for years it was going this way anyway, where I was doing more and more stuff. And before it was a kind of more of a team effort. You know, I would do all the production side of things, but other people would be doing merch. Other people would be doing visuals, whatever, videos, you know. all these things that go along with it that you don't think about, because you just people just see the music and the glory, right? But I was doing more and more of that anyway. But then it got to the point where it was like, do you want to do this do you want to find new people? And and I was like, if I'm going to run a shop, I'm not going to run someone else's shop. I'm going to run my own shop, So I said, of course the label was pushing for us to move forward and do more stuff, because obviously they had invested a lot of love and time and money in the band, and so had we. So I still, we have a very good relationship. I love those guys at Rock of Angels dearly. They're very good people. But I kind of didn't see the point. You know how it is. If in Ravenscry, let's say the three of you guys left, and you were kind of left to do a new album without the primary songwriters and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, of course you could kind of force it, but would it be? Would it even be the same band? Would it be as good? I mean, it would be different for sure. So for me, it was like I would rather have Monument be away for 10 years and then come back as strong or stronger than we ever were, with the same vision, the same intent, and all this stuff, then go and dilute it now with other stuff and other people that no one knows, and just confuse the fans and dilute the brand, So we decided to put it on hiatus, is the short story, So nothing new with Monument, but I'm doing other stuff, So I'm not being lazy, I have other irons in the fire at the moment, So yeah.
That's very good. It would have been like just only keeping the name and changing all the people. It would have not been Monument.
And I know some people, like some bands do this. If you're a Mega Dave or a David Coverdale or whatever, you can do that, but not when you're a young band that has 3 albums out. It's this kind of thing. It's tricky. Who knows? Who knows? I'm putting it out there, universe. I would love to do it again one day. Let's see what happens.
Speaking of which, I see that Matthias saw as I think. It was not Queen Strike. It was Operation Mindcrime, which is actually the Geoff
Tate's band.
Band, yes. But fun fact is that we actually played also with Queen Strike in Italy.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes,
I really like La Torre. He's a fantastic singer,
Oh yes, he's also a great guy.
But I also like Jeff. I have to say, I saw Jeff with Avantasia last year. I think it was last year. And he's still fantastic, I know he had problems with his voice a few, maybe 10 years ago or something, but he's fantastic again,
Oh yes, it was great for all the tour. He always performed very well, and it was fantastic. Also, we met all the other guys, which are very young musicians going on tour with him. And
with Jeff, huh? Yeah.
Yes, and they're great.
I think the guitar player is married to his daughter or something, right? It's one of these things.
He is not married, but yes, they are engaged.
Okay, they are engaged. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Also, his daughter is performing. During the shows. Yes, she is doing the part of, I don't remember the name of the character she does in the show, because they just play all Operation Mindcrime.
Yeah. Is it Sweet Sister Mary or something? Is it the nun?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The nun with the needle. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I like Queensryche.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. I envy you that, but I'm happy you had the experience.
Thank you.
No, very cool. Very cool.
It's time to speak about your project. So what's
the moment we've all been waiting for? Well, the moment I've been waiting for. Okay, so I've told you a bit about kind of building the studio and stuff. So I'm back in Germany, and I'm kind of working more as a producer these days and doing less of the session stuff I used to do. When I was in London, I was playing all sorts of types of music for all sorts of people. But when Monument kind of went on, so I have two, let me start here. I have two projects at the moment. One of them I can talk about, one of them not so much. Let's start with the one I can not so much talk about, where this is an album I'm basically finishing pre-production this week.
Okay.
I've been writing a lot, not just me, but I've been writing a lot of the songs for an album. I think we have like 11 or 12 songs together at the moment. So I'm really stoked for this album. It's kind of an all-star thing. So it's like, I can't wait to record with these people. Honestly, it's like people who have played for Alice Cooper, who have played in Stradivarius, in Rage, in Running Wild, in Mystic Prophecy, and in like the creme de la creme of fucking power metal bands, you know. So I'm really stoked to be part of that. It's kind of, you know, back to the German roots and all this kind of stuff, you know, after, you know, kind of doing the traditional British metal thing for such a long time. And then when I was producing, funnily enough, a lot of death metal bands in recent years, you know. So I'm very happy to be back doing, you know, something that's more akin to, let's say, hard rock or whatever, you know. So that's that thing that I can't really talk about. The thing I can talk about is that when Monument kind of went on hiatus, I've been putting off doing my own album for years and years, because I always said I don't have time. If I don't do it now, I will never do it. So I decided, because you know how this is, I was like, man, I don't know if I can build another band from scratch. You know, I don't know if I have it in me. I don't know if I have the energy. But I said, you know what? I owe it to myself. I've been putting this off for so long, because I don't know how into Monument you are and what you know about the songwriting and all this kind of stuff. But it was mainly, like with Kalachullos, it was mainly the singer writing most of the music. I would contribute a part here, a part there, work on the arrangements, but I wasn't songwriting as such, you know.
Okay.
So obviously I was still songwriting, but I was writing stuff that always came out kind of too heavy and too modern for a Monument, you know. So I'm working on an album, long story short. I'm working on an album at the moment, which is sort of a band and sort of my solo album. You know, it's kind of not really one or the other. I decided I didn't want to put a lineup together, like to go out and do it live and all this kind of stuff yet, and commit to kind of a bunch of people. I was like, I want to have the freedom of working with a bunch of people that I've always wanted to work with, that are good friends, that we've always like enjoyed each other's work, and we've always seen, you know, but we've never had the chance to work together. I said, why don't we do this? So instead of getting one singer, I decided I'm going to sing some of the songs, because I haven't sung in a long time. I used to sing in bands in my youth, you know. But so I'm singing on a lot of the songs, and a lot of them I share with other singers as well. And there's a couple of songs that I don't sing on and other singers sing. And the only real other member, I would say, is a dear friend of mine called Sebastian Weiss, who's a drummer who I grew up with. You know, we were in our first band together here in Bremen. So he's doing the drums. We're recording drums in July. Guitars are done. Vocals are kind of half done. I'm doing bass after the drums, you know, that kind of stuff. But what can I say? I would say it's somewhere along the lines of melodic thrash metal or something like that. Like I told you earlier, I like really, really heavy music, but I like melodic vocals.
Okay.
Aggressive vocals, but melodic vocals. You know, I'm not too much into the screamy, growly all the time. There's a bit of that on there, but just a little bit of, you know, just a bit of seasoning, not all the time. I'm very much into, you know, Dickinson and Dio and, you know, Coverdale and Jeff Tate, as we spoke about, and these kind of singers, you know. So the singers I have going on are confirmed so far. There's one I'm waiting on for a reply, but so far we have Herbie Langhans did a number, who is the current singer for Firewind, and he's been in Avantasia for years. Rasmus Anderson is doing a song, who is the current singer for Diamond Head, and we used to live together in London. You know, a Danish dude, very cool guy. Matt Mitchell is doing one. So those are the three guys. So Matt Mitchell sings in a band called Furion, who are kind of kind of, they have a more American sound, you know. He has a more kind of Bryan Adams-y but heavy kind of sound, you know. They sound like a combination of, like, if Alter Bridge were grungy and proggy at the same time, if you know what I mean. They're that kind of band.
I think, you know, we played with them.
Yeah. They
but
used to tour Italy and Spain quite a lot when, you know,
we were in Belgium. Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the Prague Power Metal Fest in 2014.
Yeah, at PPM. PPM.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We played PPM with them another year. This is why we know each other. You know, they're Brits as well, but this is the first time we met, you know,
Yes.
properly. So you know the guys. They're
Yes.
great. You know, I'm great friends with Lee, the drummer. We've been playing together for years and years. But yeah, I always wanted to work with Matt. I've played with him, you know, doing, you know, the odd covers thing here or there, but I always liked what he did, and I always wanted to, you know, write something for him, and I had a tune that I thought would really suit his voice. So he's doing a tune, and then there are two girls. So there is, or two women, I should say. There is Aliki Katriou, who is of Greek descent, but she lives in London. And she's an amazing singer, as well as kind of growler and screamer. She does a lot of that stuff. She's a vocal coach. She has an amazing range, and she's going to do the operatic stuff for me, the Julia kind of stuff for me, but she's also going to do the Angela Gossa kind of stuff for me, you know.
Okay.
So she's going to be on 2 or 3 numbers, but smaller parts, you know. And the other girl is a girl called Jen Deal, who sings in a band called Fire Red Empress, or kind of, she has an amazing distorted voice as well, but very different kind of distortion, not the low guttural kind of stuff, more akin to, man, who do you reference? I can't even think of anyone she sounds like. She's more of a rock singer, like a really aggressive rock singer than a metal singer, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
You know? But yeah, these are so that's kind of the vocal team, and then I'm going to be doing most of the bass, but Chris Dale will probably come in and do a number on the bass, and I've got a few guest solos. I didn't want to like get too many guest soloists on, but I have Chris Webb, who used to be in Biomechanical, is doing, and you probably met him at these Furion shows because he does a lot of the Furion live stuff.
Okay.
Big curly hair, plays a mesa, you know, but a fantastic guitar player. So he's the only guest guitar player, and then Bob Cazione from Firewind is going to do a keyboard solo, because I wanted, you know, from my heart, I wanted a cheesy 80s Jens Johansson keyboard solo on one of the songs. So yeah, you can see I'm putting it all in there. I'm just, you know, I spent so many years writing, you know, for an agenda, writing for a certain audience, and doing everything kind of to a formula and all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to, you know, I decided deliberately, I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want on this album and live it out. I have songs from the past 10 years, you know, I have so much stuff that just needs to come out. And then I can kind of think, you know, I can make some room up here and kind of, you know, do some new stuff, do some fresh stuff. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. It's going to be really cool. I have no idea how I'm going to do it live yet, if that day ever comes, but I will find a way. And if it's, you know, I always think of it like kind of like, do you remember when Slash did his first solo album and it was like a different singer on every song, and then it kind of a lineup crystallized out of it, and then the next album was a lot with, you know, Miles Kennedy and this kind of things. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff I can see happening with this as well, you know, because some people unexpectedly kind of, you know, come into your path sometimes, and you kind of make these kind of things work. But I just wanted to get something cool out there, you know. Yeah, which I'm super stoked for. I'm assuming we will release in the spring. I don't know what's happening with Corona. I don't know if things are going to get pushed back, but it's one of these things, you know. So I want to release next year for sure. Great. Yeah. Great. So hopefully both these albums will come out next year. So I hope, although I've kind of been off the grid for a long time, I know I don't post much on Facebook these days, or on my Insta, just because, you know, we're not out playing, right? Everybody's stuck at home, and I don't want to be, I'm not that guy. I don't sit and make a YouTube video every week. I don't, you know, I'm working on productions. I have stuff to do. I have other things, you know. So I'm looking forward to listening.
Cool,
man. Thanks, man. Me too. I can't wait to have it all finished. You know how it is when you do everything yourself. You know, I'm going to be doing all the mix and that stuff as well in like September, October time. So I've been working on it for a long time, and I can't wait to kind of step back and look at the finished thing, you know. But yeah, I'm stoked. I'm excited, you know.
When I will do my first solo album, that probably no one will care about.
I
will care.
Rob, thank you.
I pre-order 10.
You will be my guest, man. You do a guest solo. So.
Oh, of course, man, dude. Anytime. Of course. I can't wait, man. Of course.
Oh, and then I will be interested.
Yeah, man. What do you think it's going to be in comparison to Ravenscry? Is it going to be more old school, cheesy 80s rock? Is it going to be black metal? Or is it going to be
classic hard rock style? Yeah.
Oh, cool, man. Cool. I look forward to hearing it, man. I can't wait.
You need a bass player.
Yeah, but I can't pay you. So
I know some people. Don't worry. This is it, you know. Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Honestly, are you working on stuff, or are you is it on the back burner at the moment?
I have a lot of riffs and songs in the computer that like you know, it's been years.
You collect.
I was thinking about that every time, but I haven't had the time. I will do later. So, but it will.
The time will come, right?
Yeah, the time will come. Thank you.
This is it, man. This is it, though, isn't it? It will present itself, and you will be like, okay, now is the right time. You know. Cool.
Talking about production, so since you are also a producer, when did you start doing that? You know, being a producer, and what kind of project do you follow? Do you work for other people as well, I suppose? So tell me, I'm curious.
I've always been into recording. I remember my first, you know, I didn't have my guitar for a year yet. I was writing riffs, you know. They sounded like Maiden and Metallica, but I was doing stuff, you know, and I had no one to play with at the time. I didn't know any other musicians, but I was already like doing demos on my cassette recorder. I remember I would like record one guitar, just one fucking guitar on the cassette recorder, and then I would play it back loud and play the second line on top, you know, tapping my foot on the floor, you know, for some sort of click. These kind of, you know, that's how. So I was always into it. Like I remember, and when I got my first computer as a teenager, I had this program. I don't know if you remember a program called Magic Studio or whatever it was. It was like a German, you know, cheap Cubase kind of type thing. And I remember the drum loops were very good. Actually, there's a few that I'm like, man, I miss that sound, you know. Anyway, but yeah, I was always into. So I was classically, you know, in the box, and then when I was studying in university in London, you know, part of the prop music course was music technology and kind of how to use Logic and Cubase and all these kind of things. So I studied that intently, and I think one of my first German bands. Second EP I think we did at the time while I was still in university was kind of the first thing I recorded at home. Everything apart from the drums I think I recorded, and I mixed and all this kind of stuff, and it was terrible, you know. It sounds like a demo, but it was how I got into it, you know. And then when I finished university, for the first 6 months I actually decided it was a good idea to rent a studio with friends, with one or two friends, and we would run it together as a studio. But I decided it was a good idea to live there as well, which seemed like a great idea at the time, until you've done it for like 3 months and you realize there's no windows, you get no fucking sunlight, you know, there's no air to breathe, there's always fucking musicians, and you can't get some rest. But so anyway, it was a great experience, and it was like that's when I learned how to use a board, like how to use outboard gear, how phase works, you know, and all these kind of things that when you're just kind of programming loops and playing solos on top of them in the box, this is not the stuff that you learn. You know, I had to kind of go and do an actual studio thing and meet other engineers. But then, to be honest, through Monument, and other bands. I was lucky to work with some very good producers and engineers. And I would always want to be there, you know, like, so we did an album with a guy called Scott Atkins, who's kind of, who was, I think he was an intern for Sneap for a while.
Oh. And
he does all the Cradle of Filth stuff. He's done some Amon Amarth stuff. He does a lot of kind of heavier bands like that, Silosis, you know. So, but he's still to this day, like, one of his drum sounds is one of the best drum sounds I've heard. And it's nothing fancy. He doesn't have a huge room. You know, he has Focusrite preamps. It's nothing. There's no like, you know, magic.
Yeah.
It's just him and the way he works, and his attention to detail, the way he tunes his drums, the way he cleans every cymbal before the recording starts. You know, all these little things that just add up. And, you know, mic placement and all these things. So yeah, I learned from these kind of guys, and you know, we worked the last couple of Monument years. We worked with a guy called Tony Newton, who does like the Maiden live stuff, but he kind of wanted to do more studio stuff. So we were doing studio stuff with him, and kind of, I was just learning by doing a lot. And I was watching a lot of these guys. What do they do? And what tips did they give me? And I would always be there and pay attention, you know, and just be in the background and not say too much. And yeah, this is how I learned. So and production wise, I mean, you know how it goes. I started doing my own band's demos in the beginning, and then other people would approach me for their demos. And in the last few years, I was, you know, although I was branching out and doing different kind of things, obviously through what I was doing with my music career, I was getting a lot of, you know, rock and metal and the heavier side of things coming through. So I was doing a lot of bands. Like last year I mixed a band called 8 Lives Down, which is kind of a proggier, somewhere between death metal and Savatage kind of band in London. Mm-hmm. And the year before I mixed a band called Apophis, a German kind of 90s death metal band. They're a bit older now, but they are, you know, they kind of went off the scene for 10 years, and they did like a comeback thing, and a bit more power metal stuff. Like there's a band called Reverend Hound, a German band as well, who's kind of, the singer sounds exactly like Belladonna in Anthrax. You know, it's one of those kind of, it's kind of a heavy, you know, somewhere between power and thrash. So this is the kind of stuff I'm working on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more melodic stuff now. I love the death metal stuff, but I also, like, I've been really stoked to be working on heavy but melodic stuff in, you know, since last year again, and working on power metal and working on thrash metal and stuff like that. So right. Yeah, that's what I love. That's what I do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great.
That's good. I think that when we are talking about engineers in the studio, everything is not so much about the gear you use, but
yeah,
it's more about their ear. You do everything by ear. After a while, it's not like, oh no, I cannot work with that kind of preamp or that kind of microphone.
Exactly.
No, you have to find your own sound and go for it, no matter what the
getting it right at the source, and all these things that you keep hearing them say, but you don't believe it for years, and then you're like, oh, I get it now, you know. But yeah, this is it. Honestly, people come to you as a producer, and you know this as well. They come to you for your ears and your taste. You know, they come to you because they know that, you know, a lot of the times because you have a good relationship with them, they know that you know what they're trying to do, that you understand their vision, and that your intention is to help them get there. I mean, my thing, I don't know how you feel about this. My thing has always been, I always try to help bands find their sound and find something unique that is obviously modern and punchy and all these kind of things. But so many bands these days think it's about, oh yeah, I want that, you know, I want that kill switch engage drum sound, but I want this Architect's guitar sound, and can we put all these things in the soup, please, you know? And they want to sound like these other bands. And then they go through years and years of this before they realize that that's not what it's about, that they should be trying to find their own thing because they're sounding like everybody else and their artwork looks like everybody else, and you can't tell them apart, you know? So yes. I always say this to bands, if they want a preset production, don't come to me, you know? If you want us to work on something special, and and find your sound. And if you haven't found it yet, and if you know what it is, capture it as well as possible. Then that's what I like to do, you know?
I agree. For example, with Ravenscry, we always try to keep our sound. I think that our band doesn't sound like any other band or the cliche of the genre.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's something that people love or hate. There is nothing in between. But there's this funny comments I received on the last album, this 100, about the snare drums, because they complained about the fact that you can hear that the snare is just a sample and it's not a real snare. And I'm very happy about this, because actually this is the first album that we didn't use any kind of sample on the drums.
Isn't it funny how this happens? Isn't it funny how this happens so often? I get the same thing. People go, oh, it's too much sample. And I'm like, there's no fucking sample. And the other way around, people go, is it programmed, you know? And it's like, no, it's, you know.
And that's great. That's a big compliment.
It's so strange. It's strange, isn't it? And the other way around, like you say, it's like, and then if you use tons of sample, it sounds real to them. It's this perception of what is real and what isn't. It's such a fine line, isn't it? The same with tuning vocals and all these things. Yeah. I think you guys do it very well, and I'm not just saying that because for me it's like, if you try really, really hard to sound, you know, like exactly like what the technology can do this year, in 10 years time all these things sound dated, you know.
Yes.
But if you do your thing, and yes, you try and stay on the edge and you try and stay modern to an extent, but you still do your thing and you do something unique, I think these things have the potential to age better and to be classics, you know. Whereas I don't know if you know, something that has, you know, what's you know, Stephen Slate drums or whatever, you know, like the most recent plugin on it is going to be hip in 10 or 20 years time. I don't know.
Yeah. Also,
I think it's going to sound dated.
Yeah. I think that in the last year I heard like 30 albums with the exact same sounds or drum sounds.
You know.
I mean,
this is
okay,
it,
guys. I can say, and I recognize the software they use to do that. And what's the point?
It's a shame.
We usually use samples on drums mixed with the actual microphones. You know, like 30%.
Same here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You reinforce, right? You use the decay and all these kind of things. And it's the same. I mean, I see everybody, you know, I have these discussions with people about Kempers. I love Kempers for live. Like, get a good tone in the studio, play with some sounds, make something unique happen, profile it if you want, and take it on the road so you have exactly that sound. But I don't get, you know, I don't get bands like Bullet or whatever who kind of go into a £10,000 a day studio and bring their Kempers through and then play them through a cab. I'm like, I just don't get the point. I do not get the point.
I like the concept of Kempers, and they are very useful live because you can have your sound around
everywhere
the
you go.
Everywhere, with
no
feedbacks, no stuff like that, which is great. Also for, you know, sound technician, you just come there with the XLR cable and you're good to go. No microphone.
Precisely.
But we had one Kemper in the studio. I tried it. We are endorsed by Hughes and Kettner, and we had some amps over there, some cabs. We profiled them. They sounded okay, I think, but compared directly, the real amp was always sounding better. So we sold it. We sold it.
Yeah,
there is no use for it in the studio.
The studio. Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree. Yeah,
it's another thing, of course.
Yeah, I love Hughes and Kettner, man. I used to play Hughes and Kettner when I was in Germany before, because, you know, they were a popular brand and they did some fantastic amps. you know, being in England, I gravitated more towards British amps, but who knows, you know.
Of course.
I haven't played a Hughes and Kettner in a long time. What do you guys play at the moment? Like what kind of amps do they have? Is it
they
Grandmaster?
Yeah, the Grandmaster Deluxe
Grandmaster.
40.
There it
I
is.
think it's called. Yeah, it's the
Cool,
small
cool.
one. It's
Cool.
40 watts, but it
Perfect.
would work even in 20 watts, 5
Perfect.
and 1 watt, or even no
Perfect.
cab. And also they have the big head, the core blade. Which,
yeah, I remember the core blade.
Yeah.
And that's it, I
Cool.
think.
Cool.
Yeah, but I wanted it because it's blue.
Not the
It
core
looks
blade.
amazing, right? It's weird. I remember I always wanted to like get into Hughes and Kettner's more. I had a Hughes and Kettner 50-watt combo transistor when I was growing up. It was like my second amp after the shitty thing that came in the starter pack when I started playing.
Okay.
And it was beautiful tone, you know. I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it. But anyway, but yeah, at the time there wasn't any cool guys endorsing. Like Alex Lifeson was the big endorsee they had, and that was kind of it, you know. So for me, it was never like a metal amp, a go-to metal amp when I was 15 years old or whatever. So that never happened, you know. But who knows, you know.
Yeah, we should
I might pick one up one day. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, let's move on to
Sure.
Your hobbies and interests. What are your hobbies and interests?
So weird, isn't it? Because I don't know if I actually have any outside of music. You know, I'm one of these people. I lived in a big city for 11 years before I moved away, and I don't know if it's just because of the contrast to this, but I get more and more into nature again these days. I just love being outside. I love tranquility. I love, you know, green things and living things, and you know, I love the garden and I love the forest and all these kind of things, and kind of being at peace with myself, you know, and doing these sort of things.
Right.
I love reading again. Now, there was a long time I didn't read. You know how this is when you're studying so much and you're always reading stuff that, you know, to learn something, to better yourself and all this stuff, and it kind of takes away the fun in reading sometimes. So I really had to discipline myself to get back into reading, because it's a skill that I think you can unlearn, because it's hard, man, in a world where you're on your phone all the time, and you know this whole short attention span, instant gratification world. It's really hard to concentrate for 600 pages, man. It is. And I had to teach myself how to do that again, how to train myself without getting distracted, without my brain always going off somewhere else. But I find it's good meditation for me, and I enjoy it, especially before bed. You know, I like reading fiction again, you know, and it's weird. It's kind of, I had one of these years where I knew I would be here anyway, and I would be building the studio, so I would be home a lot. But now, obviously, with lockdown, I'm home even more. But I'm like, I have these books, this series of books that I've been meaning to read for years, and I've never picked them up because they were so daunting. Because it's like, I'm on volume 3 now. It's like 900 pages, and volume 4 is like 1,200 pages, like 1,200 pages. So I'm like, fuck, I'm never going to get this done in my life, you know. But now I'm like, okay, I have a year. Let's make this happen, you know. And I'm enjoying it, you know. I'm enjoying it. But yeah, it's weird. I don't have, outside of music and everything that goes with it, the artwork and all this kind of stuff, I don't have a creative hobby. Let's say I don't go and paint or whatever. I always like to think when I'm an old man, I may go back into, I used to draw a lot and paint a lot when I was a kid. So maybe when I have gray hair, I will do the Bob Ross thing, and I will, you know, go outside and paint trees or whatever. But at the moment, I don't, you know, I have my friends, I have my wife, I have my music and my production, and I build stuff at the moment. It's this thing I've never built, you know, a building in my life. So I'm like learning all that stuff at the moment, and it's gratifying and fulfilling in another way, you know. So I have no more space, you understand?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kind
cool,
of, the CPU is full, you know.
You're still happy. Like, you're happy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
enough.
Yeah, man, it's weird. I try to get back into gaming. I'm like, oh man, I'd really fancy a game, but I just don't have the time. I can't focus to like finish a game anymore. I used to, because this is what happens to me. I then get addicted to it, and then I have to play 3 hours every night, because otherwise I get out of the habit and I forget how the buttons work. But I can't do it anymore. I don't have the time and the attention span and the patience, and I always have shit to do, man. It's weird. But anyway, there you go. This is it, you know.
Another nerd.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, who isn't, right? Hey, Raquel.
Hi, Raquel.
Hello,
Hey, Raquel. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
What kind of games do you play? Did you play?
In my heyday, I will tell you a story from my youth. We used to go to the pub in town till about maybe 11:30, because the last train was around midnight to get me home, right? So we would get the last train home, and then we would all meet online and play Diablo 2 all night long.
Wow.
So this was like every Friday night for me. You know, other people were going out and meeting girls. You know, I was going home after getting drunk with my friends to meet the same friends online to play Diablo 2, things like that. So I was always an RPG guy. I was always kind of late to the party. You know, don't know if you remember the early days of Mac. Like, my parents had an iMac and it was fancy, but like no games worked on it. Like, games came out 2 years later on the iMac or whatever than they did on others. So I always missed the boat. But yeah, this was my youth, man. Morrowind and Age of Empires and these kind of things. And later on it was, you know, Skyrim and you know, RPGs. And I dabbled in other things. You know, when you play with other people, when you want to play co-op, okay, I go and play Halo or whatever with friends. But yeah, I was always a nerdy nerd who liked D&D style games. That was always me, man. Yeah. How about you? Same?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was a lot into RPGs, but they are too time consuming.
This is the thing, you know.
Yeah, because they're good. You're playing with people all over the world. Yeah, we used to also do these meets with all the guys playing with us on the same server, and we did the dinners and all that stuff. It was a good community. We stayed in contact after, but we don't play anymore because, you know, life happens. So
life happens, precisely, you know. I don't know. We'll all hit the midlife crisis at some point, and we'll all be back in our cellars playing Xbox, you know, whatever. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I can't wait.
A player in the back. Here he is, you know. Jesus.
Okay, man.
But yeah.
We used to ask our guests to do a final speech.
Okay.
So your time has come.
I should have prepared something. Kids, boys and girls, be good to each other. This too shall pass. Don't despair. I know it's really hard, especially for people who are like alone and, you know, who have mental health issues anyway. It's hard to be alone with just yourself all day, every day in the same four walls. But this too shall pass. We'll get through this together. We're all here for each other. You know, it's in an ironic way, I've seen more people kind of taking care of their fellow humans in this time when they can't see each other face to face than in the past, you know, decade before. So I hope something good comes out of this, but I also do hope that we get to go and play live again very soon. And I hope to see everybody on the road very soon and backstage very soon and at the merch stand very soon to sign stuff and talk to you all and chat to you all. And yeah, man, go buy Dan Baune's album when it comes out. You know, he will appreciate it very much. No, I seriously, I hope you guys enjoy it. You know, I like always, I don't know what's happening with music industry stuff at the moment, but we're all working on stuff, you know, to keep you guys entertained, and I think a lot of other people are as well, and I hope that some really cool albums are going to come out of this time. I'm certainly trying to make something cool come out of this time, so I hope everybody enjoys it when it hits, you know. And yeah, man,
Cool.
thank you to everyone who's been here and has hung out and kind of listened to me chat, whether they know who I am or not, you know. I hope we have added some little bit of interest to your evening, you know, or morning, wherever you are in the world. You know, Raquel in Brazil. I don't know what time it is there. Is it later or is it earlier? Did you just get up? She probably just got up. Man.
It's earlier, yes.
Yeah, I don't. I get so confused, man. Anyway, this is it, you know.
Thanks, man. It was,
Cool.
It was a pleasure for us to have you.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much for the invitation. You know, it was a welcome surprise. I didn't know you guys were doing this. We haven't seen each other for years, and it's just been so nice to hang out and chat about music and other nerdy things, you know, and to see that you guys are doing okay, you know. Keep it up, man. I'm going to be watching a lot of these. I can't wait to see who you get on it next and so forth, you know. So, and you know, good luck with the new album. I know it's going to be weird because you can't tour it this year, but I'm sure next year is going to hit even harder, you know.
We will.
Awesome.
We will.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Nice, man.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day or your night. Thank you very much.
I will sleep a very short amount now because I'm up in the morning. You know?
Me too.
But this is it. Life gets in the way, right? So it's all good.
Yes.
It's all good.
Thank
You're welcome,
you,
Raquel. Take care, you guys. Lots of love.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night.